still doesn't have a driver's license.
So because of that, I went to the eye doctor and he said, you have cataracts and we can fix them. And when I came out of that, I had 20/15 vision.
Let's just sit quietly for the next 2 minutes.
We're waiting for the owl to fly.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Call the February 27, 2025 work session of the New Kent County School Board to order. We're going to open with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if everybody would stand. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, guys, for ease of the agenda, we're going to take these things out of order tonight, and we're going to start with the easiest thing, which is going to be the school board meeting calendar update. So, Dr. Nichols?
Yeah, so one proposed change with the calendar due to board member conflict. We're currently scheduled to have a board meeting Tuesday, September 16th. So the proposal is to change it to Tuesday, September 9th. The rest of the calendar remains the same. So that is the proposed calendar change, board members.
All right, anybody have any questions, comments, or discussion?
No?
Mr. Reimer?
No.
All right, great. All right, the next thing we're gonna take up is, under new business, the school board member initiatives protocol. I know you guys have reviewed it, so let me just start by saying that this is just a rough draft, as you can tell, of how we create a framework to have any individual school board member bring something to the board that school board member, deems important and that we want to place on an agenda. So my initial thought process was, if anybody has a topic of importance, that they, maybe write up something or present something to the chair and the vice chair that says, this is the issue I want to address. Here's the duty or the obligation we have as school board members to address this topic. Here's the policy that needs to be addressed, revised, or whatever the case may be. And then suggest at least one action or suggestion for revision or improvement. And then that would come to chair and vice chair where we're setting the agendas. We'll put that on the agenda for what I would call a vote of consideration, meaning it will come before the board and the 5 of us will vote as to whether or not we want to take up that topic or not. So that's kind of the idea behind the framework. I'm just going to open the floor generally for discussion, so whoever has any input or suggestions around that idea. That Mr. Reimer?
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest there's actually a fairly practical deadline for this. The vice chair and chair's meeting with the superintendent, if 2 days before that, it seems like that would be sufficient advance to get it on the agenda, because the part of the issue is publishing it publicly, right? Part of it is reviewing. 2 days before the meeting seems to be reasonable to me. Just a thought.
Sure, I appreciate it. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think what we have here, I think the 30 days, and we talked about this in that meeting, the idea is that once you come up with something, For instance, Ms. Dombrowski and I are gonna be working on some policy changes. That will give us time to really vet what we're doing, look through it, make sure that we've discussed it and we have everything like we want it in order. That's ample time before we bring it, and then it has to go back through. We do the first reading, second reading, and then something comes up, need to change or whatever. So I like the idea of the at least 30 days, unless there's something emergent, which I can't imagine that there would be in terms of policy change. But just to give it that time to thoroughly go through all facets of any changes or any policy addendums and or policy, new policies. that
I
we-
think just to piggyback on that, if I may, I like the 30 days myself, because I think it gives the other four of us the ability to digest what that is, you know, look at the policies ourselves, do some homework, and be prepared for when we're actually voting on that topic, as opposed to, you know, 2 days before, we're trying to get it on the agenda, and nobody really has had the time to look at it, and the meeting's next Wednesday, whatever the case may be. So, you know, obviously open to hear what everybody has to say, but I like the 30 days as well, because I think everybody is able to be well prepared for that subject that's gonna come up.
Can I just ask for clarification on the 30 days? Is that 30 days from when?
So, exactly, it doesn't say it, like I said, rough draft, but the idea would be 30 days before the, regular session we wanna have it on the agenda for.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Mr. Chair,
Please.
is that also specifying that whatever we're proposing, I understand it needs to include this information, but it doesn't have to be like in full? Like if we're working on policies, would we have to say, this is the policy that we want to work on, this is tied to this specific action, here it is in full? Or is it just at least, like, do we need to get, I'm troubled at the thought of, like, putting all this work into it and then bringing it before the board, and the board's like, yeah, we really have no interest in this.
Right.
So is it like bringing forward the idea so that we can get a better feel that people are interested in
a good question.
moving forward?
I think it's a
Great.
fantastic question, and then I think you're onto something, which is, no, it probably doesn't have to be, right? I think that, you know, kinda like this rough draft, that we have a framework of here, I think this is where we're going with it, right? And then the board is able to say, all right, we're gonna put that on the agenda for next month, and now we've got additional time to actually get all the meat and potatoes together that we wanna put,
Right.
you know, and post on a public agenda and so on. So, yeah, I think that makes sense.
So what did we just agree, what was
Right.
clarified?
Open discussion, we haven't agreed on anything
I
yet.
understand.
Yep.
I think, let me rephrase what I think I heard. The point that Heather was trying to make is, we may present a rough idea 30 days before, and the 30 days then give us time to work it out. But that rough idea, the presentation of the rough idea is when the clock starts.
I think we gotta break that apart a little bit. So I think the matter that you want the board to address needs to be specific.
Yes.
But then the suggested revisions or changes or things for consideration can be rough.
Okay.
So maybe you don't need a full 30 days for just the idea
Yeah.
to come
You
forward?
get a pulse, or like how do you,
Whereas
before you put all that work into it?
before,
Yeah,
yeah,
but think about what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring the organization together
Absolutely.
so that everything
Super
works out. So if we were to bring to the board, let's say tonight, we're gonna work on policy, this, and this. The board would vote, yes, we're interested in that, yes, we're gonna do that. So our investment of time over the next 30 days is not in
vain.
vain.
In vain.
We're able to do that because we've already got approval, we know we're gonna bring it. And then we'll bring what we've changed or brought to change, and then we can,
So it's not in vain if it's voted down. That's just a decision by the board.
that has nothing to do with
Correct,
it.
right.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, that the work that would be done on
I
it would
see.
be in vain if it were not, if we did all that and then brought it, and the board says, nah, we're not interested in that.
Right.
So,
Okay.
it's putting the horse before the cart.
Okay, so you're arguing the opposite way of what I thought you were arguing, sorry.
It's okay.
So would there be a different time frame for just proposing that you want to, bring this up at the board meeting and have it added to the agenda as a topic of discussion, not so much looking for approval on a whole slew of, whether it be a policy or,
So in other words, topic of discussion would be, here's this idea related to this policy, for this reason. At that point, we would have a discussion, and then we would know whether if the rest of the board was interested in pursuing it or not.
Exactly.
And then at that point, then
then we would
the
need
next
to at least
phase,
provide 30
right?
days before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Clock starts, yeah.
Clock starts then.
So let's kind of step back, I think it's a great question, but let's step back and look at the big picture, right?
Yeah.
So the idea is, what time frame are we investing in to have a fully vetted idea with suggestions and revisions and changes come before the board for a first read, right?
Got it.
Or a discussion or an approval. And the total time frame would be 60 days, right? The way that we're thinking.
Yeah.
So, right, 30 days to present the idea, tie it to the duty or the policy, maybe the rough idea of what we're trying to accomplish with the change or whatever. It doesn't have to be fully ironed out. The board's gonna vote then at that next meeting that says, yes, we're interested, no, we're not. If we're not, obviously it's a dead issue. If we are, then you've got 30 days to get, like I said before, your meat and potatoes together. It's gonna get posted, you're gonna have a first read, and we're gonna do what we normally do, right, at a regular session.
So I guess just knowing exactly, like, if you could tell us, you need to tell me by this date, if you want something added to the agenda, and then from there it goes to, okay, now if this gets approved, then this is what your deadline will be going forward with the meat and potato part of it.
Right, and so maybe 30 days is not how it lands exact, but what the thought process was regular session to regular session.
I
Right.
get that. I get that.
And I
60
have
days
just-
seems a long time to get a first read.
Say that one more time?
60 days seems a long time to get a first read.
Why?
Because a first read is not going to be your final vote anyhow. That means it's 90 days to a vote.
Respectfully, I agree with you, I think that happens in certain situations, but as you know from the year past, there's lots of times we're putting the item to action on first read and moving.
Oh,
You yourself have done that.
I agree that the day of is not good. I'm just saying 60 days, it seems like we're backing a little. I would say something along,
So to your point though, and I understand what you're saying, how would we get that to coincide with when we actually meet and decide?
yeah, I
things?
know, and that's
Because
what I'm trying to think.
unfortunately, the way the rules work, we're tied. We can't have discussions and emails and go, okay, let's do this. We have to vote on it in public.
Yeah.
We also have the work sessions in between there that we could possibly use, no?
Well, I was kind of thinking of that, actually. Is, when we have a work session, could we use that instead of the next, as a next scheduled session, sorry.
So let's work through that idea, right? So we have a work session today, meeting is Monday.
Yeah. Yeah,
not gonna
no, you're right about
Here's
that.
the other thing.
The next work session
Yeah, no,
is
you're
March
right.
17th.
You're right.
It's 2 weeks.
No, I get it.
Here's the other thing with that. We would end up creating work sessions for specific things. I don't see that we need to do that.
Right.
The 60 days, if you think about some of the policies that we passed, they've gone through that
If
pretty
not
much
longer,
anyway,
yeah.
or longer. They just came, it was a lot messier.
Here's the other thing I want to sort of, for us to consider. What happens if all 5 of us have an initiative at the same time?
That's what I mean, yeah. No.
Okay, so now we've got 5 votes of consideration. The next agenda, we got 5 things that everybody's presenting, right? And that's a big task to take on top of all the other things we already have on the agenda, right?
And the 60 days allows us to get through that.
Correct.
Yeah, no, you're right about that.
And board would just know, that's the way it works. Your ideas and initiatives become our role.
Right.
So,
Of course.
we've gotta build room. We've talked a lot in budget about how stretched we are. You're gonna need details, you're gonna need some of it you'll be able to lift, but, we're gonna have to weave in there with you, so.
Well, I'd like
we
to-
love the support.
That's
Now,
an
your
excellent-
last
that's an
I'd like the
argument
board
persuaded
member,
me.
that's the board member that has the initiative to do most of the lifting
Yeah,
for
carries,
them, right?
carries the heavy
That's
lifting
the,
of it.
that's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
point, it's
That's
our
the
obligation, our
expectation.
duty, and the thing that we wanna change.
But, to
But we have
Dr.
to gather
Nichols' point,
information
sources of information will have to come from
100%.
administration, so it will involve them. So I think the 60 days is a,
Cause I'm already thinking in my head, we need some sort of tracker, and we can work on something
Yep.
to do that, so that, nothing gets dropped or lost, or, like we do anything.
well,
else.
and you would know from the meeting where it was approved or
Yeah.
not approved from that point that you had
true.
ample
Yeah.
time to do whatever with it.
Yeah. I am, just to sort of build this into the agenda, I am working on a new framework for the agenda, or an expanded agenda, if you will. And one of the items will be, school board member votes of consideration, where we're voting on, hey, this is what we're doing, right? Additionally, some, additional categories for student achievement, academics and athletics, an expanded, comment section for school board members, activities and committee reports and all that, so the agenda's gonna get, the agenda's expanding, right, which will make the meetings a little bit longer in certain cases.
yeah, depending on,
Right.
yeah, what's covered.
Board members, I added a couple, I'm just drafting and taking notes for you guys, as deputy, as the real clerk is doing it. I added, so at least 30 days, prior to a scheduled meeting. Does that help in that first one?
Yes,
Yeah,
Bring some,
because
Yeah.
that brings a little clarity to where
Okay.
when the clock starts running.
okay,
yeah.
that's the only edit I've made, if you guys come back to.
So it could be, it could certainly be before 30 days, right? If I wanna
I
put
know,
something
but-
on May, obviously we can
You know
do
what's
that.
gonna happen
But if it
is
comes-
everybody's gonna come to their meetings with their initiatives, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right, and I think, if it happens to be on day 29 or day 28, it's not gonna be a strict cutoff or anything like that, unless we got 48 initiatives, cause then
Right.
it might be, right?
Right.
So just a little common sense approach.
we're overachieving.
And you, out of all fairness, you can limit,
Right,
defer to the next.
right, and I think maybe that's something we see how it plays
Yeah.
out, right? If there's one or two at a time and we're easily tackling those
Right.
things, that's fine. If it ends up being 10 on every agenda, then obviously we're gonna have to set some limits.
Well, in my mind, we have to prioritize and be strategic about what do we wanna focus on? And I think we'll be more productive that way.
That's right. That was sort of the overarching idea of the email that I originally sent out to everybody, which is, what are your goals? What are your top 3 goals, right?
Right.
And everybody had some different things, right? I was hoping that, all 3 of those would line up ideally, and for the most part they do, but they also don't, right? There's things that people have interest in that other people don't, so, when we're taking up these initiatives and we want it to apply to a goal, right? It's not necessarily, these are the 3 goals and that's it. But to Ms. Cunha's point, it's something that, what are we as a board, what are we moving forward to, what are we trying to drive in this particular season? That may change next season, next fall,
Yep.
next year, right? For us right now, obviously, it's budget, it's new cadet elementary school, it's, academic achievement and launching a strategic plan. Like, once those things are set, then we can move on to whatever might be next. Any other input from anybody on this?
I think with a small change, it's good to go.
Mr. Reimer?
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, you convinced me with your everybody doing it at once.
No.
I added prior to, 30 days prior to a scheduled meeting.
Okay.
That way, outside of that, it's as stands.
There are typically 2 large policy updates a year revolving around General Assembly too, so
Yep,
like there will probably be one in
after July,
April or May, and then typically one comes out this summer.
right,
I have one additional question.
sir?
It says must be tied to a policy. If there is no policy and you propose a policy along with the idea, I assume that meets the requirement?
I agree.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Maybe we can make it say that, must be tied to a policy or a proposal of policy. Yep,
Thank you.
yep.
Got it.
And I like that because it ties in everything we do to a policy that we can point to.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, everybody okay with this topic?
Yeah, I'm good.
Very good.
Thank you.
We're gonna move on to the final, topic of the evening, which is school board member visitation suggested protocol. So as you guys are aware, this was on norms and protocols. We decided to remove it from norms and protocols so that we could have this meeting and discussion and work through it. The idea, generally speaking, is to present, or have another framework as to what individual school board members can do or how they should do it, depending on the event or the involvement in, you know, whatever the particular topic is. But primarily, I think the issue, was classroom visitation. So, again, rough draft, I'm just gonna open the floor for discussion.
So I would like to propose number 3 be changed to, each school board member shall be entitled to 1 classroom visit per quarter. Other visits may be made if, as, I want to get the idea that you can request a visit, request the board for another visit.
Okay, so I'm with you, let's flesh that out a little bit, because I think that's already accomplished here.
I'm not, well, I read that and I wasn't sure.
That's okay, and we can reword it, that's fine, but it says unless otherwise directed by the board as a whole. So the board can decide, hey, this is something that we want to monitor and watch, and delegate the duty to one of the members to go do this
But
more
I
frequently.
wanted to get the idea of a request coming from the board member to the board for another visit.
Okay,
Not necessarily direction by the board.
okay,
Does that make sense to everybody?
there's a distinction, I understand it.
Yeah. So you've made your visit and you see something else you want to visit about, you make a request to the board. It's, you know, I know,
Okay. So we could add, for example, and I'm just spitballing here, ladies and gentlemen, we could add a 3A that says, you know, school board member, shall be permitted
to request
to
additional.
request additional
Yeah, something like that.
classroom visitations. Something like that,
Yeah,
okay?
I, okay.
Please, open
So,
discussion.
as far as just in general, this top part here, it seems a little not necessary. I mean, we are permitted to attend, I mean, isn't it understood that as school board members, we are permitted to attend these things? If we look at policy K, as it's currently written here, it says periodically, board members may visit schools within the division. The purpose of these visits is to assist in fulfilling their responsibilities and increase understanding of actual educational practices. School board members follow the same procedures applicable to all the visitors in visiting the schools, and then they mention up here with that, to check in with the
Right.
welcoming committee, whatever. So,
So my reply to that would be that the policy, that exact policy is the policy we're trying to, or at least considering to revise.
okay,
That is extremely generic,
right.
in my opinion, or reading of it, and I think several board members have had questions about how does that actually work? Am I allowed to go to this? Am I allowed to go to that? So the idea behind sort of the preamble here is to say, school board members are freely allowed to do all of these things up there. Right, so that it's
Right.
clear, we don't have to worry about, do I need permission, do I need to talk to the board, is it okay with
actually,
Dr.
we're
Nichols? You could
encouraged
just-
to.
Right, exactly,
Right.
so,
So the word permitted to me, I like your word encouraged, because permission, it's like, school board members.
yes, but remember, so this
I
is
know, as
kind of
a
where
board,
the
as a
rub,
board,
no,
yeah.
but this is where the rub is, which is, and we're, you know, attending these events, it's a gray area where we're not necessarily doing anything official,
Right.
but you're seen as an official, and
Right.
as an individual board member, none of us have any power or authority at all.
Individually, right.
So as a board, if we adopt a policy that sort of creates that,
Gotcha.
paradigm, if you will, the school board has said, Keith, as an individual member, can go to all the award ceremonies he wants,
Right.
Right,
right? It's almost like a delegation,
right.
does that make sense? Anybody have
No,
any thoughts on that
Tell
one?
me that policy again, Ms. Quinn.
Excuse me?
I've looked at it before, but I couldn't, it's KK.
It's, KK. Section KK.
I'm just looking at something beyond.
Visitors to the school.
Yeah,
And I think, to your point, Keith, I mean, yes, we're visitors to the school, but we're not, and that's why it's separated. There's parents generally, and then board members.
Right.
They're different categories, right?
Right.
They're different people for
Right.
different reasons for going there.
Well, and I'm the perfect example of that, right? I can show up to something as a school board member, I can show up as a parent, I can show up as a citizen.
Yeah.
What am I doing, and am I complying with the rules, right? If I've got essentially a rubber stamp as a school board member to go to these award ceremonies, I don't have to worry about
Gotcha.
permission
So
or
it's
notification
specific,
or,
and even if anyone questions, there it is.
correct,
Can I also have clarification? 1 and 2 seem to be a little contradictory
okay?
as written. Because 1 says, well, we could read it.
I think it means after step 1, there's no need to
Right.
do
So
anything
what is
else.
the proper protocol and chain of command? And advise the superintendent of a desired visitation at least 48 hours in advance.
Those two parts of the sentence may actually be one and the same, Ms. Goodman, yeah, right? So I think what the draft, the idea of the draft is that the school board member would notify the superintendent of a desire to visit. Okay, but one of the issues, or questions that were raised was, sort of doing a classroom visit without the advance notice,
Classroom visit, yeah.
so that the school board member can get the raw view, if you will, instead of a performance by a teacher, because they know, hey, somebody's coming to take a look, which is the idea behind number 2.
So in other words, number 1 is just advising the superintendent that you want to visit a particular building, but you do not need to specify why you're there.
and I will tell you, just for
No, you
implementation
don't need to
pieces,
specify what classroom.
Oh, right, okay,
Like-
what classroom you're going to visit.
for example, practical tomorrow. So
Yeah.
let's say a board 2 days ago says, hey, I wanna go to middle school, observe literacy, whatever. I'll say, there's a horrible day to go, it is staff, student, faculty basketball game, you're gonna show up, and it'll be a great time, but you will see no literacy during 1 to 2.
Testing.
Or it's a field trip, or it's testing, or, we run there are a million things going on every day that we sort of have, laid out.
So we could, in number 1, Ms. Cunha, we could eliminate, shall follow the proper protocol and chain of command, that whole sort of part of the sentence, and just say, school board members shall advise superintendent.
Now, I've visited
48
classrooms with the superintendent. Does that fit my visit? Does that mean that I have met my 1 visit requirement or limit? So I've visited classrooms multiple times. I visited them with Ross and his knowledge, and gone there with Ross and
Sure.
and observed. I've gone with the superintendent multiple times and observed, and I've done it more than once a quarter.
Yeah, herein lies the problem.
Right.
When you pull him, or you pull Ross, or you pull anybody else to go with you, you're interrupting.
Well,
You're-
actually,
you're-
some of the times I've followed him.
Well, you're actually, there's that line, the top of the line is school board members, the bottom of that line is administrative duties, responsibilities.
Okay.
You're dipping below that line when you do that, if you make a requirement. Now,
But if I may,
Sure.
let's take that one step further, and I think this is maybe the overarching issue, at least that I have. I had no idea you were in that classroom. I had no idea what you did in that classroom. I got no information from that classroom, and neither did anybody else on this board.
Got it.
You had no authority to be in that classroom.
Well, the one time I actually did.
Well, you understand what I'm saying? I'm not saying each, you did something wrong, but the idea is, why did you do that? What
Yeah.
information did you get from doing that? Did you
And the
bring it
one
back
time
to
I
the
actually
school
brought
board?
back to the
Right,
school.
well, that's the point. That's what we want to do, right?
Right.
Did you bring it back to the school board so all of us now are informed about it?
Right.
And then maybe it's an initiative we're putting on the agenda because we want to change something. That's the idea.
Got it.
Right,
Right,
because
that's
that
the
was
idea.
part of the problem, because we didn't have an avenue for communicating that information, because we're not supposed to talk together, and then, you
Right.
know.
Yeah, it becomes
That-
an
it becomes
individual,
like-
it becomes an individual thing that the board at large has no idea what, what's going on, what the purpose was. Is it something that needs attention? Is it something that needs to be changed? And this, I think, is a mechanism to really inform the entire board, keep everybody, it's not an individual quest or goal,
Right.
although the individual is the one seeking the information.
And Mr. Ryan, I'm gonna connect a specific example with you. So number 4 up there, it's not numbered, so above that, 4. Attend events that have been invited by the school principal, member of school division. So specific example with you, in budget last year, you talked about instructional coaches and not.
Exactly.
So what we did related to budget, we invited you and did that piece. You came back to this table and
And
said,
talked
I'm a
about it.
strong advocate for coaches.
Yeah.
So to me, that
Was not a classroom.
that is not, to
Got
me,
it.
that's under, to me, I'm not a voting member, but to me, that falls under that, to attend events that have been invited to.
Now, I didn't write it, but I
Alright,
could have
you're
easily
forgiven.
written.
Yeah,
You're forgiven.
No, I'm just trying to clarify.
yeah,
That's what we're all doing.
well, and that's why I'm saying that, 'cause that is my interpretation of that 4th one up there. I just wanna make sure we're all,
Bless you, my son. You are forgiven.
Okay, so then when we email a summary of the report, I think that's a great idea. This is part of that whole transparency and accountability and informing everybody else.
Right.
Because we can divide and conquer, but share, right? But
Correct.
then, if it's emailing to everyone, as long as we don't have a conversation about it, I can send it out to everyone? Or do I have to still send that email out to you, and another one to you, separately, and to you?
Well, what I would suggest is bring it to the board meeting.
You can email, you just can't
Have a conversation?
in real
in
time.
real time reply alls.
So a
Okay.
text message would not be a good idea.
Yeah,
No.
but a summary of classroom
Here's a
visit,
summary of the,
you,
report.
without breaking anything, can send it to all of Team Newcastle.
If you don't want to reply.
You just have to be careful with your
no, I
replies.
wouldn't want to reply, because
Right.
then it opens
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
finding.
Well, I think you're using your better judgment for what is the best practice here, right?
Yeah.
If it's, we visit a classroom, here's all the information I gleaned from that visitation, and I'm gonna shoot it out to all you guys, because we all should have the same exact information, right? Then maybe in that email, I'm saying, it was a great visit, I don't see anything for us to discuss, don't reply, right?
Yeah.
Or it's, here's what I found, I think we need to work on this, guys, I'm gonna make it as one of my initiatives, don't reply,
Right.
right? And that's how we're trying to create a
Yeah.
framework to get things to the board so we can make some action.
Good.
Okay.
Can I make a statement?
Please.
I have some concerns that I just feel like I need to kind of hammer out about this, so I don't get too serious. I brought my happy hammer. I feel like I want to address the elephant in the room, so I also brought
Is there an elephant?
the elephant in the room being, I feel like I'm the one who's caused the problem in going in and visiting. I know, well, I like to go in the schools. I like volunteer in the schools. I like to be in the classrooms and get a feel for how things are going. It was a promise I made to myself and my constituents when I was running that I was going to be doing that. I get that, I understand what you're coming at with all this, and that it is important to have protocols in place. One of the reasons why it upset me when it first came out was it felt like, based on the conversations that Mr. Pagano and I had about how some were seeing my visits as upsetting or disruptive, I was like, I didn't see it that way. I'd always called or emailed the teacher and asked them, when a good time would be for me to come. I laid it out, this is not, you're not being observed, I'm just there to help. I really just wanna be there to offer my thanks and any support. And again, just kind of see how the kids are doing. So it really saddened me to know that I was causing issues or making teachers feel like they're being observed and watched, because that wasn't my intention at all. But when I first received that, you know, the first, we have to get permission, just kind of felt like I was being accused of committing a crime, and now I was being issued a restraining order, and I didn't have a chance to like give my side of the story. Or like a parent with, you know, in the custody dispute, okay, now you can't go visit your kids unless we're there to monitor you, and it just, that's how it hit me. So first, I just wanna offer my apologies to the teachers and administrators, anybody I may have felt like I was in there to cause trouble or undermine their efforts. That is not at all what I was going in the schools to do in any way. I just felt like being in the schools would help me make better decisions on, you know, as a school board member. But my other concern in reading these was that if any of these are being created to help the teachers and the administrators not feel like they're being watched, some of these came across to me as very, like, if a teacher knows that we have to email summary or report back to the school board, I don't know if the teacher's gonna really feel at ease, you know, knowing that, especially if I'm like in the back of the room making all these notes. I'm just concerned, like,
You have to do this.
what would be, I told Dr. Nichols, like, something right out of the KGB, man. I am going to come into your class, and then I have to submit a report by 0800 hours, 2 days a week. I just wonder, maybe, would it be worth getting some teacher input, like, and creating a culture, a paradigm shift where teachers know that why we're in there. We're not in there to critique them or to say, why are you doing it this way? Just something we can do if we get teachers that can maybe provide some input as to what they would feel most comfortable with. I always felt like I had a good visit, and maybe they were just too afraid to, you know, that's just been the weirdest thing about being on the school board, hearing that you intimidate people, or that like,
You're the boss.
I know, but
But we can't fire
Heather, you
anyone.
did that prior to being
I
on the school.
What I'm
Oh, yes, you can.
But what
I have never
not
been in,
individually.
Him.
Not
Just kidding.
well, not
Right.
individually.
No.
Can
I've
I-
just never been in
Yeah.
a, you know, authoritative position, and so it's just weird for me to hear that. I'm trying to get it in my head. But I always thought, you know, teachers appreciate me coming in, you know, maybe they're just like trying to say like, yes, you're great, wonderful. But what can we do to really have a conversation where we are Team UCAN and we're not just in there like
Well,
letting them
if I may,
feel.
I was actually in there to evaluate.
I-
Now, I'm the bad guy here. I mean, I was going in to assess,
This sounds much better.
assess and evaluate a particular practice. And I had a postmortem after the session so it was very clear that I was doing that. And we talked about, in the budget session, something else that Dr. Nichols was advocating, and I was thinking of doing something similar. To satisfy myself that it works. You know, that's why I'm going in. I'm primarily not going in there to evaluate the teacher itself, but the program. But I'm evaluating, I'm assessing.
Right.
Mr. Chair,
Please.
first, Ms. Dombrowski, let me say this to you. I don't believe, I mean, what you did is what you deemed to be right and proper and fulfilling what you had said you would do. So don't ever think that that's a bad thing. I think all of us coming in, new board members primarily, are, the first part of that is feeling our way through and figuring out. And also, you'll learn, and I think you did, this is, board member 101. People, teachers, friends in the school system look at you very differently now
It's weird.
than they did when you were down there, you were doing the same thing. But I like what we're doing here because we're setting, we're charting a course for school board members, school boards to come, that don't have to experience perhaps what you experienced or however that worked out. But I think it's ironic that we're spending this much time on simply one of our most menial duties. And not, and that's why I would like to get it put down, vetted, go through it, figure it out, get it down, and be done with it from the standpoint. Because this is the one, this can't be ambiguous like it's written in policy. Because this is the one place that I think a lot of school boards and a lot of school board members bleed over into the administrative responsibilities. We do not have administrative responsibilities. We either trust administration or we don't.
I don't completely agree with that.
Well, you don't have to, and it's, I have the floor right now.
Mr. Vaughn has the
So
floor.
you wait, please, thank you. But the point is this, the point is, we have enough to do functioning as a school board that we don't need to dip into, and quite frankly, are not qualified even to dip into the administrative side of things. So I would like to see this finished, completed, vetted, put into policy, so it gives direction from here forward. And we can move on into, I'm not saying that visiting the schools aren't important, that is important. And being actively involved, I think, is more important when you go to a special event, recognition ceremonies, things like that. That is where we probably give our best encouragement and do our best work from the school board member perspective. But I wouldn't wear this thing as something, you know, that, and I don't look at this as though we're slapping your wrist, not at all. This needs to be done. The policy is just way too broad and doesn't have specifics. Thank you.
Let me just make a couple comments on that before I forget, please. So, I've said this before, but I'll say it again to all of you. I don't think any board member is acting not in earnest or not in the best interest of the schools, their constituents, and the thing that we're trying to accomplish. I think that's what we're all trying to do. It's just understanding how we're maybe allowed to do that, not allowed to do that with the law, with the policy, and with now our role as a school board member, which unfortunately is authoritative, right? And we have oversight over all of these people. So we are treated and looked at differently. But here's what I can tell you. At the chairman meeting that I went to for new chairman, this was a hot topic. And I am in a room with 200 people that represented 30 different school boards, lawyers from William Mullen, the VSBA spokespeople, all that, and every single school board is tackling this issue, every one of them. And it's because the lawyers were saying, and I think I told a couple of you guys this, that this particular code section, right, the school board member shall secure by visitation, is very ambiguous, it's very gray. It was written by Thomas Jefferson with respect to UVA, when they had board of visitors that were coming from New York and other states to make rules about UVA. So the idea that we have carte blanche ability to go into a classroom versus we don't is very gray. There's no tenuous legal answer to it. It's actually very interesting. So when this came up, 50 hands shot in the air. Can I go into the classroom? Can I not go into the classroom? But what I heard overall was that most of the school boards had their norms and protocols as to how it operated, right? So that is the sort of the goal here, to answer some of these questions, to give us the ability to do these things. We're not trying to remove it. It's just, this is how we do it, so that we know when we do it, we're doing it, for lack of a better word, safely, right?
So I agree with
With the rules and the protocols. And then it sort of ties back into something that I was a little bit frustrated with last year, which is, you know, at our regular meetings, and everybody would say, can I get that information? I'd like to know about that. Can I get that data? Nothing ever came from that. And if an individual board member did actually receive the data from admin that they requested, I certainly didn't get a copy of it. I certainly have no idea what that looked like, or why it was asked for, or what somebody was gonna do with that information. And that's a problem, right? Because legally, we don't act like that. We operate as a unit. So like we're saying with these classroom visits, if you're gonna email the summary, that's because all of us need to be informed of what the result was. And then is it something that we as a unit need to act on or not, right? If we wanna make sure that math and tech and whatever classrooms we're visiting are operating and students are whatever the word is, functioning highly, then yeah, absolutely. But it's tied back to our duty as a board, a responsibility we have as a board, a policy we want to change, a new program we instituted and we want to know the results of, right? And us as a board can decide to do that all we want. We can go into a classroom every single day if the board decides that's what we want to do.
So, to be clear, I agree with you. And I see that as administrative function to some extent. That's part of why I see your point about and I think you're right, we do need these, that single members shouldn't be initiating these visits. It should be the board. That is clear. And that part I do like. The only thing that I was fundamentally disagreeing with is I do believe we have an administrative function. We have it by law. We are part of the adjudication process, right? We're the final word when it comes to
I see your point, but I think that's above the line.
But I also think we have an administrative function which you just suggested, which is when the board decides that they need to review whether or not a program is working correctly, that also is an administrative function. Review.
Well, again, I see your point. I disagree on the parlance or the semantics. I mean, I think that's oversight. That's governance,
Okay.
right? We're not running the day-to-day. Right? We're evaluating a classroom to see if the instructions are
According to board
according to
policy.
our policy with the goals we're trying to achieve that flow back to the data in our strategic plan.
Okay,
Again, just parlance.
Okay.
Interpretation. May I?
Please.
I think that part of this, I think what we ran on was accountability and transparency, and changing the culture and the expectation. This is not about a gotcha. This is about a culture of excellence, and the expectation that we as a board, and that's why I like the idea that we're gonna decide together how that should look, but that we as a board, and all of us have different skills and talents that we bring to the board, right? I'm an educator by profession. It's right and proper to go and observe, and I think more observe. I don't have the right to tell someone how to teach. I don't have the right to tell an administrator how to do his job or her job. But being in the building also creates a culture of, I think, how do you build the trust, right? Between teachers, administrators, the superintendent, the board members. The culture right now is like you said, oh, now they're afraid of me. I want us to be able to change that culture, because we're all here for the same goal, and that is those kids. And what's best for those kids? Their education, their safety, that they're getting the best, possible, so when they graduate, those 3 E's, okay. So how do we change the culture to one of trust and an expectation that, hey, any one of us should be no teacher should be upset if someone comes in to observe them, as long as they do it respectfully, treating them as a professional, etc. But this idea that we can't be going into a school, a classroom, and observing the method of teaching and the curriculum, how it's being taught, that is part of our responsibility as a school board. Because now we're having these budget talks, and all of that plays into these decisions we're making with, you know, where the money's gonna go. So I think it's very appropriate to go into and observe. And some of us have more experience than others.
And I think that's what we're saying, except that with the direction and
Framework.
approval of the board,
Framework. Well, you don't have to have approval of the board.
once a quarter.
For your once a quarter, correct. Which means, by the way, all 5 of us, that's 20 visits a year,
Right.
okay? Let me just say a couple things and then I will yield to the next person. So, I think part of the problem is, and I didn't, when I was running, I was lucky that I was unopposed, right? So I didn't have to stomp as much as maybe other people on the board, and I can only imagine, you know, how fun and exciting that would have been. But the promises, and this is gonna sound very political, I can't believe it's gonna come out of my mouth, but the promises that were made by whomever on the campaign trail, okay, were again in earnest and in the best interest of and why you were elected. But unfortunately, some of those things are now buttressing up against the actual rules that we are required to operate by that perhaps we didn't know when we were campaigning, right? And that's a little bit of a rub too, because we said we wanted to do these things, but guess what? You're probably not actually allowed to do that thing you said you were gonna do. So there's a little bit of an issue there. But your point, Greg, reminded me of something else. So, and this is just for informational purposes, but it presents a potential conflict of interest for us, sitting in a classroom. So this was a discussion that was had, because we are an adjudicative body, right? Think about it, you think judges don't hang out with lawyers, they're not even allowed to go to the same parties together, because the judge has to make a decision at some point, right? So the lawyer gave an example, which was, hey, you're sitting in a classroom, and you're observing with a teacher, and you have a conversation, you have a, hey, thanks for coming out, you know, you did a great job, you had this conversation, and 6 months from now, you're the one in a closed session voting on whether that person needs to be
In
terminated
that
or
case,
not.
I would recuse.
You have to,
You can recuse yourself.
you have to,
Right.
yes, but that creates an issue for
You're
us as a
right, it
board.
does.
Because now we've got a 4-member board,
Right.
and we vote 2-2, and we have no decision-making ability,
Yeah.
right? So that's a legal point, and of course, I'm a lawyer, right, so that's why I get hung up on it.
It's a good point.
But
That's a
you
good point.
do have a conflict of interest at some point, right? So these visitations, and the culture thing is big. It's just, where are we able to draw that line with the teacher? Because at some point, we do oversee all of these teachers and make the rules that they operate by. We don't want to be seen as the people with the hammer. You can be in the back of the classroom, you can have a smile, you can take your notes, you can say thank you very much, but what else? I'm not sure.
Here's the other point. I admire that you want to create a culture where they don't fear a board member coming to their classroom or whatever else. You can't do it. I'm sorry. It's unrealistic expectation. The fact is, unless you relationships are built on time spent
Yeah.
together. And just to pop in once every 2 months, once every quarter, whatever, will not build a relationship, a trusting relationship. I don't even believe, when I think of school board, I don't even think of creating that kind of culture with the teachers themselves and or administrators in the building. I want to know them, I want them to know me, I want that, but my primary goal as board member is to work through Dr. Nichols, to work everything through. If there is an issue, if one of my constituents calls and says, hey, this is going on, and lays out whatever it is, I'm going to him. I'm gonna take that there and go, this is the information I have. This is an administrative thing. And because I'm not there, quite frankly, I don't have the time either, nor do I feel it my responsibility to spend more than a visit a quarter in the schools themselves. I will take the time that I have as far as being a school board member and work on specific policy reviewing budget, crunching out what the information we've been given, and then bring that back. So I would love it if, Dr. Nichols has built the relationships that he has with everyone because he has the responsibility and ability to be in the schools. I mean, at all hours. I've never seen anything to beat it, quite frankly. I think, Ms. Cunha, that's an impossible goal to achieve from the standpoint as a board member with the schools. As sad as that sounds, I think my own, and I'll preface my own personal feeling is that's an impossibility to form and build those cohesive relationships. Now, you may have some because you guys in teaching, maybe you've subbed or whatever, and you have those relationships built already. I don't, and I don't expect that in 4 years that I'm on the board or 8 years or whatever, I'll be able to build those,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
It makes sense, and I wasn't even going to the point, you're right that we're not gonna establish these tight relationships, that's unrealistic. But I think the expectation that it's perfectly fine and acceptable to expect a visit from a school board member, and, that's just part of how it is, as part of accountability,
Sure.
transparency, all that.
I think we all agree that that's,
Yes.
absolutely, we want the ability to do that.
Yeah.
We're setting out that you do have the ability to do that without notifying the rest of us that one time you wanna do the visit. If you want more than that, then I think, right, we've gotta have some board action on that. And again, tying it back to a purpose or sharing that information with the board so we're functioning as a unit is probably just the overarching theme. Mr. Runner?
Yeah, all that being said, this was a good discussion. I think it clarified, in my mind, where a lot of people are coming from, and it clarified brought up some interesting issues. As far as the document, after reading it and this discussion, I'm good with it except for the suggestions that I requested. And I just wanted to put that on the record.
I think we've got a couple more points to hit,
Yeah.
guys, for feedback, but before we do that, give me 1 second. Before we do that, I'm curious if Dr. Nichols wanna weigh in on classroom visitations and sort
absolutely.
of what your feel is, what the teacher's feel is.
And Ms. Brown, I really appreciate your comments, thank you, publicly. Sort of my connection to it in a couple vantage points. One is the building that, go ahead, just rip it.
Sorry,
So,
Are you?
I'm 6 years in, I spend, let's call it 50% of my time at school, it's probably greater than that. Morning, noon, night, I have 3 events on Saturday that I don't have to go to any of them, but I showed up today in this suit, which is not even my nicest suit. And somebody goes, oh my gosh, something's happening today, you're too dressed up for. I've been here 6 years. They've seen me in dunk tanks and all this kind of stuff. You are still the school board member. You're the school board. I'm still the superintendent, as nice and as approachable. There is always going to be, and I'm probably one of the least formal superintendents you'll meet, but there are times I'm still, no matter how much I
All
want
those
to be Brian.
times they visited and said nice things to me, they're still afraid of me?
And fear is maybe the wrong word, but the
No, I'm
respect-
just.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, Chris.
I'm teasing.
But the respect for the authority and the hierarchy, and that is,
Power and-
even in a small school divisions like this, I will never be Brian, I'll be Dr. Nichols, and I'll be the superintendent. So even in the staff basketball game tomorrow, I will still be, and I'll get the calls from the referees, because they're kids, and they wanna graduate, so they're gonna give me the call. So that's that piece there. I think in essence what you're doing, and the reason I asked about policy is I wanted to double check, there's no reg associated with that policy. So what you guys are really doing is, the policy is broad, should be, the regulation is specific. So you're really creating regulations for yourself related to policy KK, is kind of my.
Where will the regulation be attached?
But this isn't a formal regulation, I'm just making the parallel. If you guys wanted to make, it would be KK-R. So if you look at policy, you will see some have the same letter with an R behind it.
Okay,
And that's the regulation. As a matter of fact, on Monday, we're bringing you an update to a regulation around early graduation. Now, board members don't have to approve regulations, that's really the administrative day-to-day work, but we need to share it with you and do those pieces. So this doesn't necessarily require board approval, and you're the board making this, so it definitely doesn't. But in my head, that was the connection I was making to policy KK. So, thank you, sir.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Mr. Rott, on two occasions, one including tonight, you specified that you don't feel the need to go into the schools or do things like that because you trust Dr. Nichols. I just wanna make sure that I'm not being misunderstood because I go into the schools because I don't trust them. That's not at all.
Oh, no,
what
I
I'm
wasn't
doing.
implying that. please.
And also that when I'm going into school, I'm not looking to do any administrative work. I mean, I'm just there to help and see what's going on. So I just wanna make that very clear, that especially any questions I might ask, I hope it doesn't, but I can understand if it does. If it comes across as if that means I don't trust you, that is not at all. Everything I'm trying to learn with school board and what their responsibilities and what it's all about, I'm learning all the time that good governance comes from asking good strategic questions. And that's really what I do when I'm in the classroom, if I do ask questions, or here at the school board meeting. That's what I'm just trying to get to the bottom of.
But I think,
Just wanna make sure you understood.
I got it.
thank you for that piece too. But, so, I mean, I got an email the other day from a school, cause Ms. Dombrowski had reached out and helped with Quality, Auto Day, God.
Next week.
It's been a
Yeah.
long day.
You ought to know better.
That's the next one.
Quentin was almost the koalas, that's a different story. But, so because of that, which is outlined in 1, 2, or 3 up top, I had the same school reached out, do you think Ms. Dombrowski would be interested in being a judge for a talent show? It's on whatever the date was. So,
No,
so
I'm working my way up.
I'm also your air traffic controller, so I look at this, it's like April 27th, whatever the date is, I'm like, oh, we're all clear on that day, yes. Please ask her, she would love to do it if she has an opportunity. But I'm not trying to, there's no roadblock here, I'm just trying to make sure traffic flows smoothly. That's all, not all I'm trying to do, but in this instance, that's really what my focus is.
call me to the carpet.
All right, does anyone else have any comments about, or suggestions, or want to discuss any other of the line items? So we haven't talked about number 5 yet, and then of course we've got 4 observation protocols on the second page, so.
Mr. Chair, as far as number 5 goes, no school board member shall be permitted to have or make one-on-one contact with. I don't know that I see that would be necessary if you omitted that and it read, no school board member shall be permitted to make individual requests of any teacher, administrator, or staff member unless, I don't know that to have or make one-on-one contact with, or maybe you want to expand on that a little bit. That seems to me, I don't understand why that's there. That's almost restrictive to the point that it will prohibit any contact, one-on-one conversation, or whatever else. As long as we're not making individual requests of anyone, or, so yeah, I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah, when I read that, I was like, but I have a neighbor that's a teacher that I see in the pool, can I not touch her?
So I mean, I just think that's a bit restrictive, but maybe I'm missing something in that I'm more than welcome to have.
Yeah, point well taken, and again, guys, remember, this is a work in progress, so if we're looking at 5, which we're gonna come back to in a second, and then go back to number 1, right, which is school board members shall advise the superintendent of a visitation. 5 doesn't necessarily specifically address visitation, and maybe it needs to be reworded or dealt with elsewhere. But again, I think it comes back to Keith Pagano, who shoots an email to the high school algebra teacher that says, hey, give me all the test results for that one particular test. I don't think that's a request I should be making or I have the power to make. And if I'm gonna do that, I've gotta do it through Mr. Superintendent, is sort of the point. So maybe it needs to be reworded, I understand that. And by the way, just what Dr. Nichols just said, right? So if we're giving permission for that particular teacher or staff member to reach out directly to Ms. Dombrowski or Ms. Cunha to attend this event, that's not the type of contact we're trying to prohibit, right? It's individual one-on-one requests for information that maybe we did last year that really shouldn't be happening moving forward.
So why
Yeah.
don't you word it that way?
And it
That's great.
says,
I don't know what I just said.
and it
Yeah,
just
what's
says,
the word? No, it's
and
like-
it just says individual requests.
I'm gonna have to take a break.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe I think maybe Mr. Vaught is onto it, so, no school board member shall be permitted, scratch out the rest of that until
To
we
make-
get to, right, to make individual requests,
Yeah,
There
unless we've got permission or delegated
Yeah.
the duty by the board. Okay, so we're scratching out to have or make one-on-one contact with.
So we're going straight from shall be permitted to make.
Correct.
No school board member shall be permitted to make individual request of any teacher.
Correct.
Okay, alright, I got that.
Now, one thing I want to clarify, in my impetuosity, reached out to Dr. Nichols today with the question that came up with Maggie Walker, and I was like,
that's right.
but if it's just like something little, and we're not asking for like reports or statistics or anything, I mean,
I think this is so we have no problem answering everything. That one question took us an hour.
shut the front door.
So it's just, you think so that's sort of where we're happy, my job is to take care of you guys. But, and Haney can jump up here if she, but we had to run down state funding for Maggie Walker, we had to run local. So those seem like those sort of requests are quick. What's the difference between this and this? Oh, it's 8 minus 6. But we actually had to go to several different tables and happy to do it. And
It
here.
just came up at Maggie Walker meeting, so I'm just like, oh.
And here's the thing, back to hierarchy. You are my boss collectively. And when you ask me for something as a board, or even as like, I told Mr. Brosky the other day, she asked for something, I got up in the middle of our budget meeting, went and got it. That's what you do, you take
All I
care.
asked for was the name of the person.
Right, but that's my point though, is we will stop and we will get you what you need. We just need you to make sure you really need it and the board needs it, and we're happy to do it. So I'm glad you brought that up, cause you and I didn't reconnect before, cause
So that's what you should say, this is gonna take a while, let's get it approved through the
But
board.
Dr. Nichols, if I may, I did appreciate that she came through you, and I think that's more, because you don't say the superintendent, you're saying teacher, administrator,
There's,
staff member.
there's small progress being made.
Yeah.
Now, next time, go through the board.
So, and I appreciate Haney's point, because and Ms. Dombrowski came to me, so if she had come to Haney, here's what happened. Haney then comes to me and goes, I just got this request, what do I do? So now we're mixed up into 3 different ways, which is why this really helps us organizationally to be efficient. So that it's not coming, it's gonna come to me one way or another. It's easier for it to come to me directly, so we can kind of work through it, but I'll work on being better about saying, hey,
this
take
one
this
doesn't
time.
quite fit.
Yes,
The
yes, don't be
visitation.
afraid to say no, to say,
The one about.
no,
All right,
this is not on my priority
We'll
list, sorry.
Well, I think what just happened there, what you described is exactly why we're doing this. So that we can bring it all, because I don't have a clue what you just talked about.
Right.
Yeah.
Was
Not a
it
clue.
educational? Was it something we need to be worried about? Is
Right.
it something
I
that
don't
we
have a
need to?
clue.
Which is what we were discussing at the Maggie Walker Regional Board meetings. I just thought,
Somewhat budget related as far as
So
tuition
then-
and.
So could you rethink that?
That's another question, so when, let's say
If I
now
don't ask it
I'm
now.
Chesapeake Bay Governor's School, and I attend something, and I get information, should I be sharing it then with everyone? Because not everybody's on the same committee, right? We're all on different committees.
And I think that's where, no, I'm sorry, I'm
Go ahead.
jumping in on
No,
you.
go ahead.
So one of the things in the draft that Mr. Pagano's put together to expand the board meeting would be superintendent,
That's what
I
you're
mean,
doing.
board member and committee comments. So Ms. Cunha and I are going to Chesapeake Bay next week. She's gonna learn a lot in her first visit there, and will likely come back to the next board meeting and go, I visited Chesapeake Bay, this, you know,
I'll try to.
in theory.
Yeah, and I have a lot to say about RVA.
Long-winded,
Yeah,
right.
I get it.
So, yeah, but I
And
think
that-
that's how that would
Yeah,
flow.
that's the whole.
Yeah.
Unless maybe it's an urgent matter, maybe that's also an appropriate time to request information.
Yeah.
Right, because now we're doing it at a public session, we're doing it at the
Yes,
board, and we're gonna
yes.
get the information, or maybe somebody can answer the question in that meeting and put it to bed.
Well, I love that. I love that you put that in the structure of the agenda, because that was part of the, kind of the dysfunctionality there with communication. So that will be very
We're trying,
helpful.
we're
Thank you.
trying.
You are.
That will not be on Monday.
No,
We make things move fast. Monday's Monday, so.
All right, let's go to the second page, unless you guys are,
yeah, I
Okay,
just, that
all right.
number 5, I don't know.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
all right. Protocols for observations, anybody on any one of these?
I just think of me sitting in the back of the classroom.
Excuse me.
Right, right, yes,
Just
you
like-
can envision it,
You
sure.
can sit on the side of the classroom if you want, depends on how the.
Either way.
I think, yeah, it's, these are regulations. They're not, you know, we're not at boot camp and we're not, you know, trying to, so I think it's good to have the structure. I think it's good to have the guidelines, the guardrails, if you will.
So the second one, and you're right, these are guardrails, because the second one, I'm like, okay, so if a student asks you a question, or if the teacher says, Ms. Cooney, would you like to join group B? And, you know,
Sure.
sorry, I can't do that because I'm only supposed to be
Yeah,
here.
that's a
observing.
fantastic
Taking
question,
notes.
and let Dr. Nichols address that. So, if a teacher wants to engage with the school board member during
And they will.
their classroom visitation, you have any
No,
thoughts about that?
because it happened to me not too long ago, and I just went in to check on kids and teachers, and next thing I know, I'm doing a small group. So I am an educator by trade, and I do it,
Right.
but, so I think, and a kid will come up to you, and honestly, when I'm in classrooms, I talk to more kids than I do adults. Adults are,
Yeah.
you know, and you learn a lot from our students.
Yeah.
So in that, if a kid wants to come up and talk to you, talk to them. If a teacher wants to pull you in, cause you're another set of hands and you have skills, I mean, yeah, like,
We were invited
You know,
to dance
that's-
once.
that's,
Yeah,
to me, I think that's,
right, I mean, I would wait for the prompting, I wouldn't
Yeah.
take it upon myself.
now if I'm observing and the teacher's doing something, go, hey, wait a minute, why'd you do that? Cause I see, you know, then you're interrupting the whole flow of the, and you know that, I'm
I know
not
that.
telling you anything you don't
And
know.
then- and
One
I-
of the,
I know.
Sorry.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I don't know that that's something that we could actually spell out every occurrence, right? We don't want it to involve the kids at all, at least in my opinion. You don't talk to a kid, talk to a kid, I mean, that's the whole point, right? But I don't think we can address all of those nuanced situations. So it's, at that point,
It's basically, don't be disruptive.
well, right, at that
Right,
point,
don't
it's,
be
it's,
disruptive.
use your best judgment as a school board member, right? Use your discretion and your best judgment to say, all right, teacher asked me for help, I'm gonna get up and help, not a problem. Teacher asked me all these other questions about policy and regulations, I'm probably not gonna engage
No.
right now, right? Use your best judgment.
So this
And,
year.
and the other thing about this, sorry, Ms. Cooney, the other thing about this is, we're setting a regulation, we want it to be as good as we can out of the gate, but all this stuff is subject to change moving forward, right? So if we figure out, hey, this actually doesn't work, and every single time I'm in the classroom, the teacher asks me this, right? Now we can know that and address that moving forward, right? Or maybe then we give some sort of edict to the teachers that says, hey, when we're visiting, we're happy to help, but you can't ask us these kinds of things, moving forward, I'm not saying now, right? So we don't know what we don't know at the moment, or how each nuanced experience is gonna be, so it's, again, using your best judgment, and then bringing that, if you're in a situation that's weird or tenuous, or we don't know how to act, and bring it back to the board, and we can create some kind of discussion and framework around, hey, that situation, it made me uncomfortable, I didn't know what to do, here's as a board what we say we'll do in the future. And that's the point.
Situation.
Please.
I was in a elementary music class, and there's one teacher, and one of the kids had to use the bathroom. She's like, I'm sorry, I can't let you go. She was like, could you take me? I'm like, sure. Then I'm like, trouble. But I just stood outside the bathroom, but maybe that's one thing that,
Right.
Like I
as a
said,
girl.
like I said, they will use you, if
Yeah.
it's another
Which
pair
was
of hands.
fine. I was so happy to help. But yeah, it was like one of those,
And that's, yeah, that's contrary to what's being said here. That's, somebody's asking you to engage to help out, makes sense, yeah, we'll do that, common sense is, yeah, we'll do that. It doesn't, I mean, it's, you know, but this is not to go in and sit there and go, oh, hey, you're not supposed to be teaching like that, or, you know, what do you, I can't believe you just said that, you know.
Well, see, the other thing is, I didn't think I was being disruptive, but apparently those were the reports. I would only ask questions like during downtime, if they're working in groups on their own, and I try to be quiet about it, so what one person deems as non-disruptive, another might deem as very disruptive.
Seems like,
I think there's also something about setting the expectations of these at the
Right.
beginning.
That's right,
Yes.
for
Because,
all the parties involved, right?
you know, when I went in to evaluate, they knew I was coming in to evaluate. When you're coming in to visit, just, you know, observe, it maybe, you know, maybe there's, just make it clear at the beginning what the visit is, what the purpose of the visit is.
My emails were very specific.
Okay.
So let's, on that, let's look at number one again, right? And so, let's work through it with me, and please just jump in. So, school board member agrees that the visitation will be utilized for the sole purpose, maybe we get rid of sole, for the purpose of observing and collecting. I think right there we can say and or, right? So if
Yeah,
you don't wanna be in the back of the classroom taking notes, right, you can just observe, that's okay, right? Collecting information and or data, again, specifically related to a school board. Maybe it's not necessarily duty, maybe it's
Well, this was sort of a
endeavor,
budget,
initiative.
it was a budget priority issue.
Right.
I think duty is not a bad word.
Okay,
But, yeah,
Duties.
yeah,
it's fine.
alright. I think you had another comment, Ms. Cunha?
Not
No?
on
Okay.
the- Yeah.
Any other, comments about the first one? Comments on the second one, anybody? Again, I think we say is allowed to observe and or take notes. Staff's generally not available to converse during the visit. Staff and instructional programs dictate full attention must be given to students at all times. I mean, we okay with that as is?
Yeah.
sure.
Sure.
Alright. School board member will take any necessary steps to minimize disruptions to learning environment caused by their presence. I think this is the whole thing we're talking about, and again, this is very nuanced, we gotta use our sole discretion, right? Any issues, concerns, or questions that arise during the visitation shall be addressed with the school administrator and brought back to the school board as a whole. That's why we're there, right? Find out what these issues are, bring them back to the board, and let's see if it's something we wanna act on or not, right?
Well,
Question?
Please.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bronson.
No, go ahead. You might
Is
cover
it
it.
school-based administrator or is it with the superintendent?
Well, right.
That's what I
So,
would like to know.
okay.
I think it should be with the superintendent
Yeah.
because
Yeah, I agree.
he's their boss.
Yeah.
Sounds good? Alright, and then the last one, school board member shall avoid access and take all necessary steps to maintain confidentiality and protect the personally identifiable information related to any of the students. School board member recognizes the visitation consists of any all time spent in New Kent County Public School facility, the rules apply to the entire visit. So, you know, notion behind this, of course, is
Yes.
we've got little kids, we've got birthdays
doxing.
and numbers and, right? Sorry,
No doxing.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, photo ops.
Right.
Doxing means, making public exactly the kind of information.
Right.
Privacy
just-
rights.
exactly,
I
exactly.
like that.
All right. Anybody have any other comments or input here?
Board members, for record-keeping purposes, I've kept up with the edits on a Google Doc, which we'll of course share with you. One question, so we have three, can you scroll
You
down?
share the Google Doc?
No, I haven't yet, no ma'am.
Okay.
So three is each school board member shall be entitled to one class, so we have that. You did a 3A, I have it as a 4 right now. School board shall be permitted to request additional visits, which would make 4, 5, and make 5, 6.
Six, right.
So I have 6 for you on there.
Yep.
That works.
Instead of a 3A,
Sure, it's fine.
okay, alright.
Thank you.
Yep,
All right, anybody else on this topic? All right,
Ms. Cunha, I'm sharing it now.
before we go to action items, we're gonna take a very, very quick recess.
We're at
All right, back in session, we are now under the action items. Before we start on this action item list, just some comments real quick for you guys, or just a question, I guess, for you guys' input. So we have been making changes on the fly.
Yeah.
I'm okay with putting this to vote, and then obviously superintendent can share the document with us, subject to our review. If we catch anything, we could obviously amend it moving forward. But I'd like to get it in place. Does anybody have an objection to that?
I do, just for one clarification, because we're approving the norms and protocols this evening, right?
That's the action items, yes. Yep. Both?
Because the previous, norms and protocols form still does not have the changes we made to that number 1. And then leaving out this idea of board member approval, to go into the building. So how does that, what we're approving here, how does that relate to this draft? Because we made some changes the last time, remember?
Yes, there was some wording on the first page, you are correct, and then I think we removed the 2 or 3 things that related to the thing
That's
we're
right.
talking about tonight. So
Yeah.
you're saying that.
And you approved it as amended.
As
As
amended,
amended.
but nowhere is that,
Reflected.
reflected, and we haven't seen that amended document.
Right, it'll be in the minutes,
But how can I approve something
you've already approved
tonight?
it.
Nope,
You approved the original document as you amended it.
okay.
Which is what you'd be doing tonight.
That's not it, I
is
guess,
to-
is what they're saying. So
Yeah.
we,
Right.
Okay, yeah, this is not it.
And it would be nice to have the whole document as amended with the new amendments as well.
ultimately, once we vote on this and it's approved, then yes, I think that's the proper.
Put it together in
thing.
one document, is that what you're saying?
Okay, the only caveat I have to that is making sure that it's all, the final document has everything as is.
Correct, which is what I'm suggesting, right, because I wasn't aware of that, obviously, but what we've done tonight is look at these, and then we've made some changes on the fly through our discussions.
Yes.
Right?
And
so
I
now
would be a
for-
lot more comfortable with doing that had she not made the point that she made, that the original, we still don't have the original document or the document as amended in front of us.
Understood, and I think that's something that needs to be addressed so we can get that document and make sure that what we voted on last time
Exactly,
is
because there could be,
published, if you will.
there
Right.
could be confusion, that's all I'm worried about.
I have shared both of these amended documents with you, because we did them on the fly for these items now, so when you get to your technology, you will have, I
mean, the thing is, as long as again, I don't wanna vote on something that's not in final form tonight.
Well, this section of it will be in final form.
I'd be okay.
With amended as amended, and can be added to that other document at a later date.
Let's do this.
Let me, just a point of clarification, fellow board members. So, based on our discussions that we had tonight, I think Dr. Nichols is right in so much as these are more regulations
Yes,
than they are, that Norman protocol, they're very short blurbs. So maybe in the Norman protocol document where we're replacing what we removed last time, it's gonna make reference to
Yes,
a revised KKR, right? The school board member visitation now regulation, because we're gonna put all of this into the Norman protocol document, right? I don't think that's the purpose, it becomes a little cumbersome,
right,
but it does need to be there.
doesn't need to be here. So here, right now, it just says, board members, when authorized by the board, should call or email the superintendent, giving a 24 to 48 hour notice if possible, related to,
That we remove these,
Yeah,
so you're looking at an old version?
yeah, but we don't have the new version, that's the whole point. I have not seen the new version.
But you already approved it, you approved it that night, as amended.
you just need the amended version.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
can we vote on the
Well,
today's and then vote on a combined?
Thank you.
Do you see where I'm going?
I do, but just, again, a point of clarification, and guys jump in, that I think Ms. Davis is trying to make is, we voted on it as amended, so the form that we looked at, we approved it with those changes.
Right.
Yes, we need to see it, yes, we need to have a copy of it, but any of those changes are not approved, right? Because we didn't do that as a board. So M and N, regardless of what copy you have, do not exist. We did not approve them,
Right.
right? And then the language changes, it's public record, we can watch it on YouTube, right? We made those changes, that's what we agreed to. We do need to get a circulated copy of that revised form, but what's in place now that we're operating by is what we voted on. And I think that's maybe the distinction,
Okay,
okay? Does that make sense?
Now, the other, I wanna make sure we're clear on this. This will be going in as policy or regulation?
It would not be policy. If you want it to be regulation, I can take this and put it into regulation form.
Well, regulation doesn't require that we,
Correct, it just requires that so what I would do is take this and make it KKR, and once again, share, like you already have both of these documents.
because the policy's already in place, voted on, amended, voted on,
yeah,
it's there.
so,
broad.
so we
But
basically,
this
we don't need to
narrows-
vote.
This becomes the regulation, or the
Related.
regulatory part, the leg of the,
So what do we need
policy.
to do?
So is the prior, what we approved, is that a policy? And this is the regulation? No, they're
Those-
both
those are-
regulations.
No, so those are norms and protocols, so not even a regulation. Because there's a policy that specifically mentions school visitation, and you're doing this off of it, we can make that a regulation. Or you can make it your school board visitation protocols, and then it doesn't go in here, it's just part of your
Government.
rules that you follow and, guidelines that you've developed, so I'm happy to, whatever you
So
want.
what's the easiest way to do this?
Yeah,
Well, I'm curious now because this is fun, right?
yeah.
So Dr. Nichols is saying that we don't have to and/or don't necessarily have the authority to say we're gonna vote and approve these regulations.
Exactly.
I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. Obviously, I trust the man, but if he decides, I'm not doing that, what have we done tonight,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's a whole lot of nothing. So I think we could put some type of vote to say that, as discussed and as amended, we direct Dr. Nichols to add these regulations and create KKR.
I move that we direct Dr. Nichols to create these regulations as discussed and amended. I move that we do that.
Do I have a second?
second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am?
On the action items, you have, it's separated, both norms and protocols for school board visitation and for policy revisions.
Correct. The one right now before us is just the member visitation.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
the other one would not be a reg at all, that is just their procedure.
so do you need to amend the agenda? Or, no, because he's doing the,
I made a motion.
Correct. Motion has been seconded. Again, any discussion? All right, Ms. Davis, please poll the board.
Mr. Reimer,
Aye.
Mr. Vaught,
Aye.
Ms. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Ms. Cunha,
Aye.
Mr. Pagano.
Aye. All right, motion's approved, 5-0. So the next one is we'll call it the School Board Member Initiative Protocol. This, I think, is simple enough to add to our norms and protocols of how we operate. It's not, I think as suggested, necessarily, we could make a policy, but it's not necessarily a policy.
I move that we direct Dr. Nichols to add this to as a policy, as a norm initiative, entitled School Board Member Initiatives Protocol.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I just think Mr. Reimer likes to direct me.
I do. I enjoy that because
You see
it's
the
an
tone when he says
administrative.
direct? Dr. Nichols, yeah,
Yeah.
yes, sir, got it.
I would ask Mr. Reimer, just so we can keep the motion simple, to amend his motion to note as discussed and amended.
I agree to that amendment.
Second?
I second.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Davis, pull the board, please.
Mr. Reimer,
Aye.
Mr. Vaught,
Aye.
Ms. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Ms. Cunha,
Aye.
and Mr. Pagano.
Aye. All right. Initiative protocol passes 5-0. Do I hear a motion to approve the changes to the school board meeting calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Love you guys. All right, Ms. Davis, please poll the board.
I'm gonna say Mr. Vaught was the second on that? Is
Yes.
that-
Yes,
okay.
that's fine.
Yeah, be
Mr.
there.
Reimer,
Aye.
Mr. Vaught,
Aye.
Ms. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Ms. Cunha,
Aye.
and Mr. Pagano.
Aye. All right, school board change passes 5-0. Upcoming meetings, the next meeting of the school board will be Monday, March 3rd, 2025. That's this coming Monday. It's a regularly scheduled meeting. The meeting will be held here at the historic courthouse in this boardroom, and we'll begin with the closed session at 5:30 to be followed by the open session at 6 p.m. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Pagano.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you for the work, too.
Can I please have your yellow folders?
You may.
Yes.
Yellow folders.
Pass them to the front of the class.
So is there